I'm more electable because I'm not so MAGA, but I was also Donald Trump's UN ambassador. There's no logic to it.
Then he's bringing a knife to a gunfight.
Welcome to Political Experts React, where we break down political ads in media, explain what the people behind them are trying to accomplish, and decide whether or not they did a good job. I'm Dan Pfeiffer, former communications director for Barack Obama, and joining me today is Pollster and founder of Brilliant Corners Research and Strategies, Cornell Belcher. Cornell Belcher, welcome back to Campaign Experts React. Good to see you.
It's good to see you. Thanks for having me back. I appreciate it.
Well, I thought we were going to get some time off, but the Republican 2024 primary is off and running, so I wanted to get back with you, look at a couple of ads, some moments from that campaign, and get your sense of what these candidates are trying to do and whether it's working.
Let's do it.
All right, so we're going to start with a video from Nikki Haley's announcement.
Republicans have lost the popular vote in 7 out of the last 8 presidential elections. That has to change. Joe Biden's record is abysmal, but that shouldn't come as a surprise. The Washington establishment has failed us over and over and over again. It's time for a new generation of leadership to rediscover fiscal responsibility, secure our border, and strengthen our country, our pride, and our purpose. Some people look at America and see vulnerability. The socialist left sees an opportunity to rewrite history. China and Russia are on the march. They all think we can be bullied, kicked around. You should know this about me. I don't put up with bullies. And when you kick back, it hurts them more if you're wearing heels. I'm Nikki Haley, and I'm running for president.
Now, this is not something I'm proud of, but I have watched this video many times. I have tried repeatedly to figure out why she is running for president, what her strategy is, what lane she thinks she's going to occupy, and I cannot figure it out. What do you think of this video?
I actually think for what she's trying to do, for what she has to do, I actually think it's a pretty good ad. She makes a very rational case that we can't keep running the last race over and over again, and she points to the fact that Republicans are no longer able to win a popular majority. And the idea of changing that is with a new generation of leaders. She is a very different kind of Republican in that she's a woman, and she's a woman of color. So I actually do get it. I agree with you. I'm not sure why she's running because I don't think that lane is big enough. Look, I think that's the Kasich, Jeb Bush kind of lane from that we've seen before, and I think she's going to get the Kasich, Jeb Bush kind of performance in the primaries. Ultimately, I don't think there's enough Republicans, primary voters there for her to rise, but I do get it.
I get it on a whiteboard in the consultant's office 6 months ago. We're younger than Trump. I am a trailblazing candidate. I'm not MAGA. I get that, except there's a problem in each and every one of those things. One is she says she's the most electable, essentially. But what she's really saying there is the party would do better if we had a woman of color at the top. But she can't say that because that would end her candidacy right there in this party. So that she's relying on the fact that she won in South Carolina, a deeply red state, twice, when you have potentially in this race Ron DeSantis, who won Florida, a much more competitive state seat, by a huge margin in this past election. You have the generational argument, except Ron DeSantis is 7 years younger than her. Ultimately, the perfectly executed campaign from Nikki Haley probably ends up in the same place as the poorly executed campaign because there is no demonstrated appetite within the party, at least as of right now, for this sort of candidate. But do a better job. People who listen to Pod Save America this week know I've been ranting about this for a week now. I'm just professionally offended at how this has been handled. So I will stop my rant now, and we will now go to potentially more fruitful territory and more that may have more impact on our lives, which is a clip here of Ron DeSantis responding to repeated attacks from Donald Trump.
I spend my time delivering results for the people of Florida and fighting against Joe Biden. That's how I spend my time. I don't spend my time trying to smear other Republicans.
Now, for many Americans, it's probably the first time they've ever heard Ron DeSantis' voice. Because if you don't watch Fox News, you've just seen his picture. You've never heard him speak. But this clip has generated a lot of attention and debate among pundits, the political community, about DeSantis' political abilities and his capacity to withstand what will likely be withering attacks from Trump. What do you think about this approach and how he handled it?
If he wasn't running in a Republican primary against Donald Trump, I wouldn't have the reaction that I'm having to it now. Dan, he's bringing a knife to a gunfight. I saw this the last time Donald Trump ran, where everyone was trying to use the same talking points about, oh, I'm not going to attack my fellow Republicans, and oh, Ronald Reagan's, cardinal sin is sort of speaking ill of my fellow Republicans, and Donald Trump kicked their asses, right? Donald Trump made fun of them, ran circles around them, and looked like the tough guy on the stage. Whether you like him or not, he's shown to be really effective at branding his opponents in a very powerful way that hurts their ability to rise. Just look back at all the names that he called his opponents in last time around he ran, and Dan, they stuck. And we were repeating them. He's got to show that he can go toe-to-toe with Donald Trump. That riff that he just did, that'd have been great if you were running against Mitt Romney in the Republican primaries a decade ago. I just don't think that's going to cut it against Donald Trump, who's going to throw every piece of dirt and mud possible at you. I don't think you can take the high road.
I'm conflicted on this one because, like our friend Tommy Vietor said he sounded like Jeb Bush, and that's basically death in a Republican primary. You never want to be compared to Jeb Bush. That is bad news for you, right? And, and you mentioned the names, right? It's like Low Energy Jeb, Lil Marco, Lion Ted. Like, it is 7 years later, and I can recite those names. Like, that's how powerful they were, and what a loser I am. But, like, they worked. You're exactly right. The way DeSantis sort of tiptoed around this could say two things. One, he doesn't have what it takes. He's not tough enough for this. And that's very possible, because he is a prototypical bully. He picks on gay kids, trans kids, immigrants. Like, he does not get into fights where there's an equal power dynamic or someone can push back on him. And so this will be the first time that happens, so we'll see. It also probably indicates that he is sensitive to this real dilemma for every Republican running against Trump. There is a plurality of Republicans, and by some polls, a majority of Republicans who do not want him to run again. But almost all of those Republicans like Donald Trump. And so success or failure for Ron DeSantis, most likely, or Nikki Haley or any of these other ones, is in that cohort of people who like Donald Trump but don't want him to run. How do you keep that together? It's not dissimilar to what we went through in 2008 with Obama and Hillary. Two candidates incredibly adored by the Democratic Party who had to find a way to differentiate each other without having our unfavorables rise for doing so. And this is going to obviously take place in a very different environment, but I think that's a little bit of DeSantis' dilemma.
It's one thing to take the high road in a Democrat primary. I don't think you can take the high road in a Republican primary. I just don't.
I agree with that. I think the issue for all of these Republicans is it is in their collective interest for someone to take on Trump and to hammer him. It is in none of their individual interests to be the person who does that.
Right.
All right, people. I've had this Crooked Media YouTube lane to myself for years now. But Tommy Vietor, who is my co-host and good friend, is trying to take my corner. He has started his own show. He has tried to steal my guests. I'm looking at you, Brian Tyler Cohen, and I cannot let that happen. And the way we judge success at Crooked Media when it comes to YouTube is not views, although we win that a lot. It is how many people who are watching that video hit the subscribe button. Are we growing our audience? And I cannot let Tommy beat me on that. I will not be able to sleep at night. I will feel bad about myself. So I have to do it. I don't like doing it, but Tommy has forced my hand. Please smash that subscribe button. Our next video is from Tim Scott, who is actively considering a presidential campaign.
I'm sick and tired of people telling me how bad it is. Now, I'm not here to suggest that things could not get better, and I'm going to work every single day to make sure that all Americans play on a level playing field. That has not always been the case. But today is not 1865. Today is not 1923. We have made tremendous progress, and it's time that we as a people celebrate the progress we are making.
To the extent that Tim Scott is likely to run for president, he is pitching himself as a Reagan-esque optimist. What do you think of his messaging, and does he have the same problem that Nikki Haley does, in which there is no lane for a Tim Scott?
Well, Dan, I was wondering, is he running in a Democratic primary, leaning in on progress and equal opportunity and fair playing field? By the way, I love it. I love what he's saying. It's sort of that optimism is like Reagan, is sort of Reagan-esque. But then I think you and I both believe that this is not Ronald Reagan's party anymore. If I were a betting man, which I am, I would bet solidly that Tim Scott throw his hat in the ring, and why not? I just think they're hoping and wishful for a Republican Party that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, you're right. This is not the party of Reagan. This is now the party of George Wallace and Pat Buchanan. People run for president also knowing they're probably going to lose because it could benefit their career in many ways, right? It's a great way to get a show on Fox. It's a great way to build up a fundraising base for your next Senate race or to run for president again in 4 years or 8 years, whatever else. But if he has an actual plan to win this time, it is this idea that Trump and DeSantis could destroy each other and that you will potentially be able to come up the middle. I'm not going to attack people. I'm going to stay out of the fray. I'm going to be the optimist, and maybe people will get so sick of these two giant assholes being assholes that they'll look for something different. And a message like this, and a message like Tim Scott has given at the convention a few years ago or wherever else, is consistent with that sort of approach.
You know what Tim Scott's lane is? It is to assuage racial aversion. And what I mean by that is Tim Scott's got to come out and be a strong voice against critical race theory. He's got to be against affirmative action. He's got to play the Southern strategy from a different angle. And let's be clear. Look, when Donald Trump starts off his campaign by saying Mexicans are rapists and gang members and talking about how there's good people on both sides and one of the sides are fascists and Klansmen, you know, I'm not peddling around with the ideal that there is racial angst and a lot of it is centered among base Republicans. If he gave a soft landing spot and a face for them not to feel any racial guilt for some of their racial angst, Dan, I think he'd probably have a fairly good lane. I don't think he still can win the primary, but I bet he'd be someone talked about for number 2 on that ticket.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I think that the Tim Scott candidacy is one to watch. How he acts and how people react to it is going to tell us a lot about the Republican Party in this sort of quasi-Trump/post-Trump era. I think it'd be really interesting. Cornell Belcher, thank you for joining us once again on Political Experts React.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching these ads and videos with us. If you have anything you'd like us to break down, let us know in the comments. See you all next time.